Now let's understand how to use. So we have seen how to install the MySQL database in the previous video, right? We also have seen load how to load the imdb.sql file, right? We created a database called imdb. We learned how to create a database called IMDb, and we dumped the data that we have in imdb.sql into this database. We have seen that. We have seen all of this in the previous chapter. Now let's go into the SQL specifics, because what we did earlier is just installing the MySQL database, also dumping some data that we have into a database, how to create a database and how we dumped or how we loaded some of the data from our database to the IMDb, from the SQL file to IMDb, right? Now let's see how to operate some very high level operations on SQL using very high level SQL operators. Now I will try to explain SQL in a very interactive fashion. So this is the objective. That's why all of our courses are called applied in nature, right? We'll try to explain this using the IMDb dataset in an interactive fashion with code, with everything. Additionally, we'll also try to give you some applicative angle, some applied angle to each of the concepts that we are learning so that we better understand them, right? Remember, in my own learning, whenever I learned something and understood where it is applied and why it was used, why it was even invented in the first place, it helps me achieve a much deeper understanding, which I'll not forget for a long time, right? Okay, back to the topic. So now I'm in the terminal. Of course, I'm using Mac here, but you can use Windows or Linux. You can do the same thing on Windows or Linux, right? This is the Mac terminal that I'm using. Windows also has a command prompt that you can use here. Linux also has a terminal, right? So Linux and Mac, both of them are Unix variants, hence both of them have a terminal. In Windows, you have a command prompt, right? In Windows, we have a command prompt, right? So now let's go in and try it out, okay? First, I log into the database, into my MySQL database, and this will change from database to database. For MySQL, this is what it is. For Oracle database, it will be different. For SQL Server, it will be different. For IBM database, it will be different. We will limit ourselves to MySQL here, which is one of the most popular databases out there. So the command here, but this is specific to only MySQL, right? So it says MySQL, this is the command, -u root, which means the user is the root user, right? The root user is the most powerful user, the default admin for everything, right? The default administrator, and it's the most powerful user. He or she, the root user, can delete, do anything, the most powerful user, right? Other users may not be able to touch some databases. There are also access permissions that the database administrator can give. Root is the database administrator. -p basically means that I'll give you the password, right? That's what this means. So as soon as you go here and enter, it'll ask me for password, right? So now if I enter the password, I log in. You know that you've logged into your MySQL as soon as you see this type of prompt. You're seeing MySQL arrow mark. This implies that you have logged into the MySQL command prompt. Now, as soon as you log in, because there might be many databases in your database engine, what you have here is a MySQL engine, right? What you have is a MySQL engine in which there could be many databases, database 1, database 2. There could be many databases within the database engine. Each database again has tables, T1, T2, T3, so on and so forth, right? So first we have to tell MySQL that I want to use the IMDb database, right? Because there are many databases. What database am I talking about first? This is like changing directories. Think about it that way. That's easy, right? Because I want to use one database, because whatever tables I want to use in the future, I have to first say what database that I want to use. And to say that, the command is very simple. It is use IMDb. Every SQL command ends with a colon. For example, let's assume I forget the colon. Okay, let's assume I forget not the colon, the semicolon, the semicolon. So here what am I saying? I'm saying use, look at this. I'm saying use the name of the database. Okay, it's use the name of the database, right? You can write use in small letters or capital letters. Oftentimes people prefer to write it in capital letters because you know that these are SQL defined words, or these are commands that you're running, so that you don't confuse it, right? That's a good programming habit. Now let's go. Let's start writing it, right? Let's say we say use IMDb. If I don't put a colon, okay, it's changed. Good. So sometimes it won't. I'll show you later. So use IMDb. My database is changed. My current database. And if you want to clear the screen, at least in Mac and Linux, it is Control L. If you want to clear the screen, it is Control plus L in Mac and Linux. There will be an equivalent command for command prompt in Windows also, right? So now what did we run here? We just said use IMDb. Even if I gave a small USC IMDb, it would still run. It changed the database, right? If I have other database that I want to change to, let's assume I have another database called Amazon, I can change it by saying use Amazon. If Amazon is the name of my database, and enter, right? Simple. So since I've changed, so this command use is useful to tell MySQL what database I want to use, right? Use and the DB name. Okay, this is the syntax. It just tells you what database to use. Now since I've already changed the database, I want to see what tables are there. Okay, so look at this. The command to see tables is show tables. In MySQL. Here I didn't put the semicolon here. I didn't put it. So it's waiting for me to put that semicolon here, right? So let's do it. So if I put the semicolon here, it shows that these are the tables I have. If I write it in, so let me clear this again. If I write it in caps, I need a semicolon here. Okay, the use did not need it, but show tables needs it. The moment I do this, it says there are 7 tables in IMDb. The tables in IMDb database are 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it executed this query in 0.00 seconds. It will also tell me how many seconds it took to execute a query, right? So these are all the tables that we have seen earlier, right? Now the show tables is a very useful command. So we have seen use DB name, right? Here we have to fill whatever is the DB name here. Whatever I'm putting in angular braces, you have to fill that with a variable name. So use IMDb. Here show tables, there is no table name or anything. You just say show tables and you get all of your tables. Done. Next thing. Now, if I want to understand each of these tables, I'll use a command called describe. Okay, I'll say describe actors, semicolon, enter. Now comes the fun part. So describe here is a keyword in SQL. So what do I say? I say describe and the table name. Because I am already using the IMDb database, whatever table name I give, the database engine, my MySQL database engine knows that the actors that I'm talking about is the actors in the IMDb table. Now here comes the fun part. Let's read it. Let's try to understand this. Okay, let me clear the screen and rerun it for you. Okay, I'll just clear the screen. Okay, describe actors. I can write describe in small letters also, and that's perfectly all right. It's not a syntax error or anything, but it's a good programming habit to write all keywords in capital letters so that when somebody reads your commands, okay, they know which of these is a keyword, the SQL keyword, and which of them are variables that you're using. Okay, it says it has 4 fields or 4 columns. First one is an ID. Its data type is an integer data type. Okay, we'll learn about data types later in this chapter. Its length is 11. It's an integer whose length is 11. Can it be null? No. This value cannot be empty or null. We'll also learn about null little later. The key, it's a primary key. What is the default value? If no value is given, the default value is 0. Right? Clear? The first name is a varchar. So varchar, again, we'll learn this later, but varchar basically means it's a character string. Okay? It's a character of variable length with a maximum length of 100 characters. That's what varchar means in SQL. Can this be null? Yes, it can be null. MUL here basically means that it is not a primary key, multiple values can be present. Or in other words, first name can be same for two different actors. There could be two Johnnies, okay, or there could be two Srikants, right? Or there could be two Salmans. Of course, some Salman Khan fans will not like me saying that, but just saying that, okay? My last name is also a character of variable length called varchar of size 100. Its maximum length is 100 characters. It can be null. And MUL basically means more than one actor could have the same last name. Again, gender. Gender is basically a character of length 1 because it's basically M for male, F for female, and if nobody wants to declare, you can just leave it as N. Okay, neutral or just leave it. Don't want to say type of thing. Okay, it can be null. There is no properties to this key, and the default value for all three of them are null. Okay, by just using the describe command. Again, we'll learn about data types. We will learn about what null is later in this chapter for sure. What the default values mean. We learn all of that. But in a nutshell, by just using the describe command here, I'm able to get a lot of details about my table here. Similarly, let's look at other tables also. Okay, so show tables. Okay, now we were curious about movies underscore directors. So I can copy it here and I can say describe movies underscore directors. Right, movies underscore directors, if you look at it, the director ID, the movie ID, they cannot be null. Both of them are primary keys together. Right, very interesting, right? Similarly, directors, let's also look at directors underscore genres, right? Okay, describe directors underscore genres. Okay, semicolon. Describe. See, there is an error here. This is very interesting to see. Okay, let's look at this. So the moment I have this error, I didn't put the describe. So it says you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual that corresponds to the MySQL server version for the right syntax. The error is near the describe, right? So this is what your parser tells you. I was talking to you about parser, right, a while ago. The parser parsed this command and said, this makes no sense. I don't know what the word describe means. Right? We are talking about parsers. This parser generated this error here. Right? Clear? Okay, let's redo it. Let me clear the screen here. Okay, so the command here is describe. Okay, describe. Yes, here what do we have? We have the director ID. We have the genre. Again, genre can be a character string or a character string of variable length of 100. The director ID, these both cannot be null. Both of them together are primary keys, and the prob is a floating point value because it lies between 0 to 1. This is the probability that this director makes movies of this genre, right? Can this be null? Yes, it can be null. The default values for all of them are null, right? So using these three simple commands, which is use, show tables, and describe, right? So use comes with the DB name. You have to give the DB name as a variable. Describe comes with the table name that you have to give to describe for it to know which table you want to use. You want to describe. Using these three simple commands, we learned a lot about getting into the database or using the database, seeing what all tables are there in the database, and most importantly, describing each of these tables, understanding what is the data type of each of the fields or each of the columns, whether those columns can be null or not, whether things are primary key or non-primary keys, and what are the default values, using just three simple commands. Okay, extremely simple. And I recommend you to try this for the other tables also. We have tried this for a few tables here, right? Let's also see, we have tried describe for a couple of tables. We can do it for other tables to understand which of these keys are primary keys and which of them are not. Very, very simple stuff. Nothing very fancy here. This is how simple SQL is, trust me.